So welcome everyone for this special session of JEWFLIX. It's our 10th episode. Um, Today we're very lucky to have the Chief Rabbi of South Africa with us to be talking about Holy Hopes, which is the cute little title we decided to give it. It's a special one also because sadly our live streaming platforms do not work today. But it's a big honor for us to have someone who has been such an incredible force in South Africa. We've heard about you from a lot of our students, and it's really a true privilege to hear from you. We have a few prepared questions for the end also, but if you anytime have further questions for the Chief Rabbi, I'm sure the South African Union will help us out to connect and make sure those are answered as well. So thank you very much for being with us, and the floor is all yours.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. It's so lovely to be with you. I have such admiration for what WUJS is doing around the world as a world union of Jewish students, representing Jewish students on university campus throughout the world. Your work that you're doing is so important, and you are looking after and leading the generation of future leaders of the Jewish people, and that is so important. And I want to pay tribute in particular as well to WUJS, to our South African Union of Jewish Students, that is doing amazing work. We have such an amazing team. I know that Gabi Farber's on the line with me here at the moment, and she's doing outstanding work together with her whole team, the entire WUJS team. So well done to everybody. And the reason I'm so excited to be able to talk to university students, to all of you all around the world, is that you are the generation of future Jewish leaders. And never mind future Jewish leaders, current Jewish leaders, because you're at the front lines of what is so much happening in a crucial sense from a global point of view. And as many of the issues which are facing Am Yisrael, the Jewish people, are happening on campus first, and you're at the front lines of what is happening. And so your leadership is absolutely crucial in leading the Jewish people at this time. And so for the short time that we have together, I wanted just to share with you one or two leadership principles that I've learned over the years, because I've been Chief Rabbi of South Africa now for more than 15 years, which is already a long time. I can't believe it myself at times that it's already been so long. And over these years, I've learned some very important lessons in what it means to be a good leader. And one of the most important lessons that I learned along the way was from Nelson Mandela, whom I'm sure all of you have heard about. I met him just as I was starting my term of office as Chief Rabbi. He had already retired as president. Because when I started as Chief Rabbi, President Thabo Mbeki was the president of South Africa. Nelson Mandela had already retired. And that in itself, his retirement for me was a very important life lesson as a leader, because he'd served as president of the country for 5 years, and actually he could have stayed on for another 5 years. But he chose to, because the Constitution of South Africa allows a president to serve for 2 5-year terms. And the ANC was going to, win that next election. And so he could have stayed on for a second 5-year term. And yet he announced towards the end of his term that he was only going to be there for 1 term, and he wanted to hand over to the deputy president at the time, Thabo Mbeki, which in fact he did. And that was a very powerful leadership statement, because and a very important starting statement that he made. And for me, I took a very important lesson from that. The first lesson of leadership is realizing that it is not about you or me, the person who's in the leadership position. It is about the people that we serve. And that leadership is not about what we can get out of it. Leadership is what we give to others and the difference we make in the lives of others. And there's this very powerful statement in the Talmud about this, where the Talmud says, Lo srara ani noten lachem ela avdut. I give you not power, but service. the essence of leadership from the perspective of the sages of the Talmud is about service and what you can do to help people and make a difference, rather than being about what you can take out of it, the power that you can exert. And that is crucial. Starting leadership lesson is to understand we're doing this for the cause and for greater people and for other people. And that's why there's a very fascinating passage in Rashi's commentary on the Torah. The very final verse of the Torah mentions the life achievements of Moses. And the final phrase talks about the greatest moment in his life, the wonders which he did. And Rashi said, what was the greatest moment? When he broke the tablets of the 10 Commandments. And if you'll recall what happened, he came down the mountain and he saw the people who were worshipping the golden calf, the Egel HaZahav, and he felt that they weren't worthy to receive the Torah because they had betrayed God. So he broke the tablets. Now, why was that the greatest moment of Moses' life? And what one of the commentators explains is that it was the moment that Moses showed that it was not about him, but about the cause. Because his mission was to take the Jewish people out of Egypt, which we are celebrating now over Pesach, and it was about being the conduit and being the facilitator for the people to receive the Torah. And so his mission was to hand the Torah over to the Jewish people. And by breaking the tablets containing the 10 Commandments, what he in fact was showing was that he was in fact showing that his mission had failed. But he was prepared to do that because he felt the people were unworthy. In the end, God forgave them and he was able to give them the Torah. But at that moment, he had to make a choice between fulfilling his own ambitions as a leader or doing the right thing and serving the people and doing the best for the cause and doing what our sages refer to being a person who is l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven. And Moses chose the path of doing it for the cause. That is the definition, the essence of what great leadership is about, is a person who sees it is about service and giving and making a contribution, not what we can take out of it. And that's also contained in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot that says, Ehovet HaMelachah, in chapter 1, Usnat HaRabbanut, love the work but hate the high position. Don't love the position. Don't love what the position can give you. Love the work that you can do, the difference that you can make for the sake of the Jewish people and for the world. Don't like what it gives you. So that's one lesson that I learned from Nelson Mandela, even before meeting him, just by his actions. Second lesson that I learned from Nelson Mandela in terms of leadership was when I met him, because I went to go see him just before I started my term of office. So that was, almost 16 years ago. And I went to meet him, and I took with me a copy of a children's book of his life story, because his autobiography is Long Walk to Freedom. And I brought it, we had at home a children's version of the Long Walk to Freedom. And so I came in the meeting and I brought it because it belonged to one of my children, to my eldest son, Mordechai. And I said to President Mandela, he was retired as the president at the time, but I said to him, still out of respect, calling him Mr. President, in the course of the conversation, I said, here is a book that belongs to my eldest son, Mordechai, and here it is. And will you please, may I ask you to sign it and make an inscription to my son, Mordechai? So he wrote there, to Mordechai, a future great leader of the world, and then signed Nelson Mandela. So, of course, my son at the time was trying to think, trying to do the maths. He's 23 now, and that was 16 years ago. So you can help me with the maths there. But he was 7 years old, if I've got that right. So now 7-8 years old. He was very far from being a future great leader of the world then. My wife definitely agreed with Nelson Mandela in his inscription. But what I learned from that inscription that he wrote to my son, and we still got a copy of that book, and we actually recently took it out again, and I gave it over to my son, who's now married, and shared it with him. And he enjoyed it, as did his wife. And what I learned from that interaction with Nelson Mandela is that leadership is about seeing the potential greatness within people. You need to see the potential greatness within every person. And that is when you'll bring the best out of them. Leadership is not looking down on people. It is seeing the greatness within each person, and then you will bring the greatness out of them. Too often, the temptation of leadership is to feel a sense of superiority because you have a leadership position. But actually, what one needs to do is see the greatness, and that will bring it out. And that was the greatness of Nelson Mandela. He was able to bring out the greatness of the people around him because he saw greatness in them. And that is such an important thing. And one needs to think of leadership the whole time. How can we facilitate that? That's what the Mishnah and Pirkei Avot, all of these lessons that I learned from Nelson Mandela, the truth is they're in the writings of our sages and the Talmud, our great sages, and this incredible wisdom that God gave us in the Torah. It's all there. So, for example, the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot says, Chaviv ha'adam shenivra b'tzelem, beloved is the human being created in God's image. And it says, V'havedan kol adam l'chavzut, judge every person favorably, see the greatness. And the commentators there say, it says, Havedan et kol ha'adam, the entirety of the person. See the full context of the person. See their life in context. See who they are. See the depth of the awesome potential that lies beneath. And then you will be able to see them in a positive way. And if you see people in a positive way, they will reflect that positivity and they will rise to the occasion. If you see people in a negative way, then they will also fulfill your expectations. The key of leadership is to see the greatness and be the facilitator for other people's greatness. Help other people reach their potential. That's why one of the Hebrew words for a leader is an adon, which Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, one of our commentators on the Torah, says comes from the word with regards to the building of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle. It says they were the silver stands that held up the beams. They were called adonim. And he says the key of leadership is to hold people up so that they can fulfill their potential. It is to allow their inner potential to flourish and come to the surface. That is key part of leadership. Those are two key principles. And the third and final principle that I wanted to share with you, because we have short time, but I wanted to share these leadership principles with you, is the spirit of forgiveness that we learned from Nelson Mandela. It was something that I spoke about at his funeral, because I was one of the religious leaders who delivered a eulogy at Nelson Mandela's funeral. And it was a packed stadium, a soccer stadium in South Africa, the FNB Stadium. There must have been easily 100,000 people packed into the stadium. It was pouring with rain. Can't believe it was a deluge of rain. And world leaders were there from everywhere. Barack Obama came. He was there. There was leaders from every continent. In fact, I was on the stage. So I had a chance to greet President Obama and hear him speak while I was sitting on the stage. It started off with the religious leaders delivering eulogies, and I was the first eulogy on the day, and I spoke about one of the great lessons of Nelson Mandela, and that is the spirit of forgiveness. That he was able to come out of 27 years in jail and be ready to forgive the government and the people who were the implementers of the apartheid regime, who put him in jail. And for a person to go through so much personal suffering and be able to come out at the end of it with a spirit of forgiveness, where they could share that and have a generosity of spirit, that requires greatness. And what I referred to in the eulogy, and that's why I say everything that I'm sharing with you, the truth is that this is the wisdom of our Torah and the wisdom of our sages, is that from Joseph in the Torah, we learn about how his brothers put him in a pit and they sold him into slavery. And yet at the end of his life, he forgives them. And he says, I forgive you. And his forgiveness came from the fact that he had such faith in God. He said, whatever happens, I'm in God's hands. And there was a bigger plan at play here, and he had within him the spirit of forgiveness. Spirit of forgiveness comes from the ability to set aside our own ego and our own sense of self-absorption. To be a great leader, You have to be able to rise above yourself. If you are too involved with yourself, and you're too involved with the inability to transcend selfishness and self-centeredness, then there's no, you can never be a great leader. Great leadership comes from self-mastery, and self-mastery comes from transcending self, meaning that we can look at ourselves objectively, and that we are not obsessed with self, and that if someone, because a person who's obsessed with self, if you're a person who's obsessed with yourself, then if somebody insults you, you can never forgive it, because you're the center of the universe. How dare they insult you? But if you're able to transcend self, then you're able to achieve real greatness. And leaders need that in order to be able to make the right decisions. And so these are the three leadership principles that I wanted to share with you. Number one is, the cause and service, not power. That is the essence of what great leadership is. Love the work, hate the high position and the privileges of position. Number two, the real sense of seeing the greatness in other people and helping other people achieve their greatness. And number three, the power of forgiveness. But the power of forgiveness, which is related to even a higher principle, which is the capacity to transcend self, to be a master of self. Now, you may ask in this time, why am I sharing with you three leadership principles? Because what I want to say to you as university students, some of you hold position in the various student organizations, some of you do not. Maybe most of you do not. But what I want to say is this: you are all leaders. Every single one of us is a leader. The sages of the Talmud teach us that leadership is not about high office. Leadership is about responsibility, and it's about influence. As the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot says, it says, "Va'amidu talmidim harbe," raise up many students. And that's talking not only to people who are teachers with official positions, that is talking to every single one of us. We all need to teach. We need to influence. We need to reach out to the people around us. We need to change the world by doing that. And that is our responsibility. And at a time like this, when the world is in lockdown and there's a crisis in the globe, what is needed in the aftermath of this, because when the lockdown are lifted and life starts to come back to some form of normal, we are going to be living in a world which is completely changed by everything that we have been through. And then we're going to need to see real leadership. And that means each and every single one of us. And when it comes to leading the future of the Jewish people, ensuring that Jewish communities around the world have the knowledge, the learning, the pride, the inspiration of what it means to be a Jew, that means sharing the wisdom of our sages, sharing the wisdom of our Torah, sharing the power of our mitzvahs, and you are all at the forefront of that. So my message to you today is: be leaders, accept your leadership responsibilities. It can change you and make you into a better person, but it can also change the world and change the Jewish world. And I've offered you three leadership principles these are just some of the examples of what I've learned from Nelson Mandela and from the teachings of our sages, but it's just the start of that. And so what I want to say to all of you, I'd love to stay in contact. Let us work together and start a movement of young leaders. You know that the overthrow of apartheid in South Africa began in 1976, and it was a student-led protest that began the slow process of the eventual downfall of the apartheid government. And so what South African history teaches is that the students and young leadership can make a big difference in the world and can help change the world. So let's join our hands together in making a revolution for the Jewish world, a revolution of hope, a revolution of education, of Torah learning, of mitzvot, of good deeds, of making this world into a better place. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for listening. And may God bless each and every single one of you with health and healing. May God bless our community, Am Yisrael, the Jewish people, the Jewish state, but indeed all of humanity with health and with healing. and with only good things. God bless you, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chief Rabbi, for those words. It's very striking, at least personally, and I'm sure for many others, as student leaders and as students in general from all around the world, especially in this special situation we're currently facing. Thank you so much for joining us today. We know we have a very packed, you have a very packed schedule, and you took the time for us, and we really are grateful and value it a lot. Thank you so much.